Welcome to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo. So the film that I'll be discussing is Black Belt Jones, which is a 1974 blaxploitation martial arts film. It is directed by Robert Clouse, who's known for films such as Enter the Dragon and Game of Death. The screenplay is by Oscar Williams, who's known for Chuck Turner. The story is by Fred Weintraub, who's known for The Big Brawl, and Alexandra Rose, who's known for The Other Sister. The film stars Jim Kelly, Gloria Hendry, and Scatman Crothers. Here is the synopsis. A martial artist battles the mafia and ghetto hoods to keep a karate school from falling into the wrong hands. Will the mafia win, or will Black Belt Jones save the day? The film was released on March 29, 1974. In regards to critical reception, it has a 3.2 rating on Letterboxd. And at the time of this recording, it is available on demand, so check your local provider. Okay, let's get into First Discovery. So I remember I had the VHS tape of this movie growing up, so I don't really remember my initial thoughts, but I just remember throughout the years, it was just fascinating to see Black people do martial arts on cinema because I feel like that was rarely seen at the time. And and as someone that I used to do karate myself, and that was just cool to see. And rewatching this movie now, it's still enjoyable. It's fine. But for me, as I'm older now, the flaws are noticeable. But otherwise, it's a fun watch, I would say. All right, let's get into the highlights. So let's talk about the martial art aspect of the movie. So the moves may be quite basic, but I feel like in a way it's quite impactful with the moves. We see that throughout the movie, like when the people at the dojo are fighting Pinky and his goons multiple times, and then of course with Jones, like when he is throughout the movie, he's fighting thugs, whether it's at the beginning of the movie or dealing with Pinky, his goons, and the mafia. I do think the sound effects help at times, but otherwise, I think it's well choreographed in regards to the movements and all that stuff. Um, it's always great to see Black people kicking ass throughout this movie. Um, I would say everyone like outside of the bad guys are quite capable with those stuff. Notable scenes that I enjoy for martial arts aspect is when Jones and Poppy they are fighting Pinky and his goons. This is late at night. This is like right after the first fight scene. So essentially, Pinky and his crew they want to come back, I guess, to get revenge and all that stuff because they got severely beaten up the first time. And it was interesting that Jones tells Poppy to turn the light switch for 3 seconds. So I thought that was quite effective, which puts I guess him to advantage, but the bad guys to a disadvantage because they have no clue where they are and all that stuff. So I thought yeah that was cool. Also too when Sydney when she goes to find Pinky at the pool hall and ends up finding Quincy and the rest of the goons there she of course has a great moment fighting them there, and they're all surprised that she is a woman because Pinky assumed that she was a man, which I found was hilarious. But I guess because Sydney is a unisex name, probably that's the case. But yeah, that was a great scene to watch, and also too, it shows that with the people at the dojo, they are a community in a way because the way they show up together during Pop's funeral, where they're kind of doing like their version of the military salute that I call it like the karate salute or martial arts salute. And they're always wearing the uniform 24/7, which is commitment even outside of the dojo. I think what Pop doesn't wear, he never wears his uniform. With Taki, like he wears it at times, but mostly in the dojo. But yeah, like it was just nice to see them, I guess, together helping each other out. Even like when it came to the heist towards later half of the movie, so I found that was cool. And what else? The cast, I would say they're fantastic. I would say for me, the standouts were Jim Kelly, of course, as Black Belt Jones. Of course, he's fantastic with the moves because I guess he was like a martial artist, so he's very skilled. Because I remember, yeah, with Enter the Dragon, because I think I saw this movie before Enter the Dragon. I can't remember; it could be reversed, but yeah, with that movie, like he was great in that movie, even though it was a supporting role, and it sucks what happens to his character in that movie. I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it, but check it out if you have not. I think this movie helped, I guess, to showcase his skills as a martial artist, but also too as an actor as well too, because he has his moments, particularly with Sydney. I would say it's definitely a highlight amongst his filmography. And then, of course, Gloria Hendry as Sydney. I thought she was great, and she was able to hold her own. And it's not just fascinating to see just black people in general do martial arts, but also to black women do martial arts because I rarely see that myself on cinema. So I found for me it was quite appreciative. And yeah, of course, like her moment, like when she fights the goons at the pool hall was fantastic. But also too, yeah, like throughout the movie, I would say she's able to hold her own. She there's a moment when she when Jones tells her to do the dishes to stay behind and all that stuff, and she decides to use his gun to shoot the dishes. That was quite hilarious, which shows that yeah, she's not going to stand down, and she's willing to fight alongside Black Belt Jones. So she's great. And then yeah, just to note that she was in Live and Let Die, the James Bond movie with Roger Moore, because I believe that movie came out before this one. But for me, like I've always known her to be in this movie, and I saw the Bond movie. I think it was like later on in life when I bought that 50th anniversary box set for James Bond. But yeah, I would say she was solid, and also too the rest of the cast did a great job as well too. Um, Pinky. Pinky is quite the scumbag. Now, of course, I mean, of course, he's a villain in this movie, so I guess that's part of the course. But he really is quite the scumbag. Like, especially like when it came to the whole IOU thing with Pop, he keeps changing the numbers drastically, which shows that he just cares about the money. And I wonder though, like why Pop owed Pinky money. Apparently it turns out that Pinky loaned Pop money for the dojo, which I kind of question why Pop went to him to get money. But I guess what desperate times call for desperate measures, I suppose. But yeah, like Pinky, he's quite entertaining as the villain, and it's funny that he calls the people in the dojo ants, even though like the ants beat him up throughout this movie, but it's hilarious. It's hilarious. And also too want to mention there's a lot of humor in this movie. I don't know like if the humor was intentional or not, but I just found the humor works in this movie. Examples include there was during that scene with Jones and Poppy dealing with Pinky and Co. at the dojo at night. It was, you could tell like there was some ADR, and it was a funny moment when they were wondering like what happened and all that stuff. And I guess one person like in a very deep voice said, "That man, motherfucker." I thought that was hilarious, but whether that was intentional or not, that was quite hilarious. Also too, one of the thugs, Jelly, that's his name. That's the big guy. Gee, I felt quite bad for him when he got knocked down every time he tried to get up during that first fight scene at the dojo. I mean, it's hilarious, but at the same time, it's, you kind of feel bad for him, but it happens. And I would say, yeah, the pool moments with Pinky were quite hilarious because the first time when I think it was like activists wanted to confront him, he it's funny, like he tells them, oh, like let's fix his cavities by essentially shoving the ball towards his mouth, which gets interrupted when Big Tuna and Blue Eyes shows up. And then, but the second time when Big Tuna and Blue Eyes show up, it's funny that it gets reversed, and he gets and Pinky gets the ball shoved down to his mouth. So I guess it's karma for the character, but quite hilarious. And when one of the thugs gets kicked by Jones, it was like towards the later half when he and Cindy were rescuing Quincy. It was funny that that it was happening in slow motion, which shows like it's like one of the longest kicks that I've ever seen. But yeah, it was entertaining to watch. But I thought that was quite hilarious. And when towards the end, when Jones and Cindy are trying to get away from the mafia and everyone else, it's funny that he threw Sydney's underwear outside, which landed on the window of the car that Big Tuna and Pinky were in. He's like, Pinky's like, why would they throw his underwear and all that stuff? But it's funny that you assume it's Jones's underwear because clearly it's not. So that was quite hilarious. And in terms of scenes, it has a lot of cool scenes, this movie. I would say the opening sequence is quite cool with the credits when Jones essentially is beating up the thugs at the parking lot outside of the studio. And I thought, yeah, the theme music is quite cool. And it goes along with the use of the freeze frames to highlight specific moments of that sequence. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I would say, yeah, the final fight scene was cool to watch too. Even though at times it may be a bit anticlimactic because Jones always had the upper hand, but yeah, that was interesting to watch. And also too, I liked how like with the use of the stove fight worked. I guess in a ways it helped to hide the stuntmen and the actors and all that stuff. But yeah, I thought that was fun. It was funny too that essentially Sydney, whenever the defeated bad guys are thrown her way, she dumps them inside the garbage truck. I thought that was hilarious. And also too, poor Big Tuna when his leg is left outside of the truck, and then he gets severely injured when she closes the truck. So yeah, that was cool. And in terms of lowlights, I questioned about the whole like is Jones an agent and all that stuff. So at the beginning, I guess an informant dies, gets killed by Big Tuna and the Blue Eyes, and then his Rolex gets destroyed essentially. And then Roberts, who I don't know if he's a federal agent. I assume so. Essentially wants to recruit Jones for this mission. But then, of course, Jones, he refuses until I guess it turns out that the mafia wants to essentially get control of the dojo because the space where it's at is valuable and all that stuff. But yeah, it was just unclear, like, is he a federal agent or is he just one of those like consultants? It was unclear on that front. Because like when we first see Jones, he's sitting behind the scenes at this like TV studio, and it's an interview that's happening, and he's just sitting there in the background. Then he leaves essentially. So yeah, it's just unclear like what he does, and also too like with Roberts and them, are they like a federal agency of some sort? There could have been more clarity on that. And I felt as though that they could have just stuck to this being like a local movie where Jones, I guess, is a local hero, saves the day with the dojo and all the stuff without involving law enforcement. But yeah, and also too, I think like the relationship between him and Robert could have been more defined. Because clear that they've known each other for quite some time, because he wouldn't just mention Jones out of the blue if he did not know him. But that's what I have to say in terms of that aspect of the movie. Another low light I had, I don't know, this maybe could be a bit of both highlight and a low light, but I felt as though there could have been more attempts for Pop to do more at the dojo. Because essentially, like, he's often there, but he's more in the background, with Lucy. And Pop, he complains to Pop saying, oh, he hasn't teach a class in a while and all that stuff. And I guess Pop just brushes it off. But then once, like, the Pinky and Co comes, I guess, to collect his debt and all the stuff, which turns out into that huge fight, that's when Pop decided to teach the class. I thought that was hilarious. And then also too, like, he never wears the uniform inside the dojo because I used to do karate myself, and often like with senseis, even too, like, I guess if you're an owner, so to speak, like you always wear the karate uniform. But I guess if Pop didn't want to, I guess it was a different time at the time. I don't know, but yeah, I thought that was quite funny. And but then yeah, like we always see him with regular clothes. He's always flirting with other women, even though he's with Lucy, and he's often gambling. So it seems like a lot is going on with Pop and all that stuff. But yeah, I thought that was worth noting. And I feel as though the Pop and Cindy's relationship could have been explored a bit more. Because even though like he had limited screen time, I just felt, I don't know, maybe there could have been a moment or two where, I don't know, where he expresses his, he misses Sydney because Sydney has not seen him since she was 5 years old. Um, but yeah, not really much really happens outside of that, but I mean, it's safe to assume that he still cares for her and all that stuff because he wants to leave the dojo in her name. But I think it's clear that they had a strained relationship. It's possible because of the divorce and all that stuff. But yeah, I just felt there could have been more moments, even though he had limited screen time. And when Pinky and Co, they come back the second time at the dojo, they easily beat up the people inside there. Now I get that with there has to be a defeat of some way, but at the same time too, it needs to be more plausible with that aspect. So either like they could have had Pinky and his thugs be equally skilled in martial arts in their own way, Or there could have been like an element of surprise where they, I don't know, they surprise them and then beat them up and all that stuff. But either or could have worked for me. But just the way that scene happened, I was just like, how can the karate students be beaten up this easily? Because they are more skilled than the bad guys. But I don't know. I don't know. And I guess towards the end, Big Tuna was asking about the pictures, and I'm wondering what pictures is he referring to? Unless if I missed it during the heist where Jones and his crew were stealing pictures along with money, I was uncertain on what he was talking about. Because the only time I saw pictures from what I recall is when Jones, when he had one of the trapeze artists, essentially took a photo of the scenery to use to cover the camera. But other than that, I don't know what photos he's referring to. And lastly, the soundtrack I felt could have been a bit better because outside of the theme song, I just thought it was okay. I felt there was room for improvement with the soundtrack, but the theme song itself was cool. All right, let's get into trivia, shall we? So, not much facts I could find, but here's what I stumbled upon. So, apparently, this movie was the second film in a three-picture deal between Jim Kelly and Warner Brothers. The other two films were Enter the Dragon, of course, which came out before this movie, a year prior, and Hot Potato, which came out in 1976. I find that interesting because I wondered though if I assume maybe they probably saw him something prior to Enter the Dragon to give him the deal, or if let's say I assume he filmed Enter the Dragon first, and then they decided to offer him the three picture deal. It's uncertain on that, but yeah, I guess good for him. Now I have not seen Hot Potato, so I don't know if that movie is any good, but speaking of that movie, apparently according to every 70s movie, the confusion to say over whether Hot Potato is a real sequel to Black Belt Jones is compounded by the existence of a totally unrelated Jim Kelly movie called Black Belt Jones 2, The Tattoo Connection, which came out in 1978, which is sometimes deceptively marketed as Black Belt Jones 2 and slash or Black Belt Jones 2, The Tattoo Connection. Because apparently in The Tattoo Connection, Jim Kelly's name is Lucas, not Jones, and was referred to as Black Belt Jones 2 for financial purposes. In Hot Potato, Kelly's name is, again, Jones. Also to the same producer and writer turned director Alexander Rose and Oscar Williams made Hot Potato after this movie. So it is a genuine sequel, but more a further adventure kind of thing like James Bond franchise. Interesting. Interesting. I should probably check out this movie Hot because I haven't seen it, but I found that's weird that I guess they decided to do that for marketing purposes with the whole sequel thing. That's not a sequel, but you know, it happens, I suppose. Alrighty. Lastly, should this movie be rediscovered? And I would say yes, absolutely. Because as I've said, I used to do karate myself. It was very appreciative to see that stuff on screen, especially when you have black people doing that stuff. I feel like if martial arts stuff in general needs to make a comeback in cinema, now I'm sure yet that's still happening, but not in regards to mainstream status. But yeah, the movie itself is enjoyable. I found the humor for me works, whether it was intentional or not. I thought the cast did a great job. It was a great, I guess, vehicle for Jim Kelly, and I recommend it. So check it out. Alrighty, so that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So you can find me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at Nomfanelo. You can find the podcast on Instagram at Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. You can visit buymeacoffee.com/rdmoviespod to donate to support the podcast, and also to view exclusive poster and follow the podcast there. Also, too, you could join the Rediscovered Movies Hub, which essentially is a version of Discord, but on the Wix website, which is rdmoviespod.wixsite.com/official, where there you could interact with others, share thoughts on the podcast, and more. And on Spotify, you can answer the featured poll. You could leave a comment and rate the podcast. On Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, and Podchaser, you can leave your review and rate the podcast. And you could submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, or you could fill the contact form on our Linktree to be featured on a Q&A episode, which will air after the end of the season. Alrighty, so I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.